Alright guys, I've been seeing a lot of this going around. This one here is Washington Post, posted on December 29th of 14. Biggest winter energy myth: that you need to idle your car before driving. It's a matter of, or a question. People wonder if they need to warm up their car anymore, or if you ever really did. This has got a number of different points in it, which may or may not be valid. Things like the oil needing to warm up and get through the motor, or moreover here, older cars relied on carburetors as a crucial component. They did not warm up and work well, la-da-da, bunch of stuff. Then they mention the EPA, which is always about blowing smoke up your butt. Regardless of fuel, oil, which everybody's going to have their different opinions on. It kind of depends on the manufacturer of the oil. It depends on where you get your gasoline. What kind of additives they put in it, and a number of different factors that are almost limitless. I'm going to disregard all of that and show you the nitty-gritty. This has to do with metallurgy, and the properties which metal exhibit will not change. I don't care what your carburetor, your fuel injection is doing, with what kind of gas you got in it. I don't care what kind of oil you got. The metallurgy of this system is never going to change, and the properties of the metal are going to react the way they react. It's just science. Two types of engines, primarily liquid cooled and air cooled. You're either going to have cooling fins all the way around the outside of the cylinder, which air moves past to keep everything cold, or this particular one, it's got a bunch of water jackets where coolant flows and eventually ends up in your radiator to cool itself back down, and runs through here, keeps the entire cylinder jug area cool. The piston, this is not the correct piston for this cylinder, they won't go together, but it should get my point across. The metal of the cylinder may or may not be coated with something inside. A lot of times it's nickel or chrome. Regardless of how it's set up, all the metal here is going to stay the same and uniform from top to bottom in a perfect circle in that cylinder. The makeup of the piston is going to change drastically depending on the manufacturer, application, and things like that. It is going to be a different kind of metal, whether it be different compounds or a single what have you. It's going to be different than the makeup of the overall metal in the cylinder, which means both of these pieces are going to expand at different rates. The flame in the combustion chamber happens all the way up here and affects the piston mostly, which absorbs that heat and consequently expands, as we all know happens to objects as they heat up. Now the cylinder needs to heat up as well. The cylinder, as I just mentioned, is going to be cooled whether by air or liquid. This piston is going to heat up faster every single time, no matter what you do to it. What's really detrimental is heavy load with an open throttle, and it's going to provide a lot of flame in that cylinder combustion chamber, heating up this piston, and potentially a faster time than is really very good and can actually be completely detrimental to the engine. What we get is called a cold seizure, and this is actually worded pretty well here. It's got a picture next to it. We're calling it a 4-point cold seizure. The term cold seizure refers to starting your engine and putting a big load on it before the temperature of the piston and cylinder normalize. The piston heats up faster than the cool cylinder and expands so fast it seizes the piston on 4 equidistant points around the outside of the piston. I had to look that word up. Equidistant, basically the same points at equal distances. I don't know why they don't say that, but there's a picture. Obviously it's one side of the piston. You can see both the score marks where they are. If you flip the piston the other way, you're going to have those identical marks on the other side. That happens because, as I mentioned, this piston, as it heats up, and especially when it heats up faster than the cylinder by putting a big load on it and all that extra flame, it's very obvious from the underside where the extra material on this piston lies, and that is on the wrist pin carrier area. As this piston gets heated, especially quickly, the area with all this extra material is going to retain heat better. It's going to expand that way, and it's going to expand that way, right on those big hunks of material, which is why you get those spots, like in this picture, where those particular four corners of the piston expand quicker and grab a hold of the cylinder wall, literally scraping and causing the marks like you see in that picture there. I don't care what kind of oil you got, I don't care what kind of cooling system you got, I don't care what kind of carburetor, fuel injection, or fuel you have in it, none of these properties of this stuff is going to change. This is much more common in a 2-stroke than a 4-stroke, which all of our modern vehicles are, and it's much less of a problem. However, the potential is still there for that to happen. These 2-strokes, they don't really have an oil bath quite like the 4-strokes do, which causes less efficient cooling of the piston, along with the nature, just the way that these are designed to work. They've got a much taller skirt. The overall mass of the piston as a whole is just greater, meaning it's going to retain heat better. I don't know the exact metallurgy of any of this. I'm not a metallurgist, but I can guarantee you this is a different kind of metal than the 2 metals in this cylinder, and they will expand at different rates and act differently. Because of all these different variables and the way that metal reacts, they have taken into account, the manufacturers have taken into account things such as this. So as you look at this piston, you're telling yourself, well, that's round. It fits in a round bore and moves up and down perfectly. Well, that is true if the engine is hot. And I'm going to show you. If you go and take a measurement along with the wrist pin direction, we're getting a reading of approximately 63.7879. Come the other way, we get 63. 63.76-ish. So you can see (7.8). You can see that this piston is actually a little bit more egg-shaped, and that has to do again with the way that all this material is in the piston. It heats up differently, and once it's warm, it will form a perfect circle to correspond with the perfect circle of the cylinder. Feel free to ask any questions, comment, what have you. I don't claim to be an expert, but I can tell you it does happen. We have proof every day. Engines come apart, people don't know how to warm them up. Again, it's generally a 2-stroke, but all of these metal properties, you know, it's science. It happens whether it's a 2-stroke, a 4-stroke. So you got to ask yourself whether you think it's safe or not for your vehicle to warm up. I can promise you that every single engine that's out there today is intended, it's tuned, and the clearances inside are made to work with the engine at operating temperature. They're never made to work at cold temperatures, because you'd be turning your car off every 2 minutes and giving it an hour to cool down before you continue your commute. Questions, comments, we welcome.